Modern science limitation versus Hippocrates clinical research. Another revelation I had several years ago when I was writing one of my books is that nobody in the history of medicine, including mainstream medicine, ever did clinical research with a particular program on a population for long periods of time except Hippocrates Health Institute. So for 57 years, we've been applying a program to every kind of person from every part of the world, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, collecting blood profiles on people, collecting their medical reports, putting them together, and having this database of extraordinary information. Just yesterday, as an example, I got a call from a woman that came to us 8 years ago. She's now 91 years old. She just got back from a holiday skiing in Europe with her grandchildren. When she came to us, she had spinal and bone cancer right down to her knees. And I said, "How was the skiing?" She said, "Almost as good as when I was a kid in my 50s. Is it magic? It's biology and consciousness. When you marry positive consciousness with proper biology, you become humane again. You become capable again. You're confused, lost, and detached. When you don't have consciousness, it precipitates fear, and we don't have things to feed and build and direct the biology." Now, proteins. Let's get a little bit into the mundane stuff that we all have to labor over constantly. Are they important? Absolutely. One of the biggest misservices I ever have seen of nutritional science is how the meat industry, from those early days in the 1920s, literally hijacked the protein discussion. And lock, stock, and barrel through academia, even to the highest level of Ph.D. nutritionist, we had to go through that back when I was 50, teaching our students and our scientists that the best source of protein is meat. And even those of you who have made the proper move forward and adopted a vegan diet still have that lingering in the back of your head because it's almost a systematic brainwashing from the time you're a child. And how dare they even suggest such a thing, since 6 out of 10 humans on this earth today primarily live on vegan diets. You're in a minority if you're in a meat-eating culture. Once again, I'm not interested in statistics and world history as much as I'm interested in what we've observed with hundreds of thousands of people for 57 years. We take people off animal-based foods, we put them on plant-based organic foods, and they come back to life. When does it not work? When people choose not to be conscious. This is not a process of just doing things in a systematic way to feed and nourish your body. If what you're only interested in this weekend is nutrition, you're going to be a little upset, because I'm going to drag your head in every direction you can possibly imagine. I'm going to show you nutrition is one of the many parts required to live a healthy existence today. And the most important part is your awareness about who? You. Because when you become aware of what turns you on, what impassions you, what fulfills you, then, I assure you, you're unstoppable doing the right thing. But when you doubt yourself, when you're lost, when you're subject to being manipulated by cultural abnormalities, it's going to be very difficult for you to stand up and be totally responsible for your life. You're more like the wind blowing than the oak tree standing. And we need to create oak trees on this planet because, believe me, they're a whole lot stronger, safer, and more abundant. So proteins act as a framework of the cell, like poles in a tent. And even if you haven't erected a tent, which I did quite a few times in my life, the old tents used to have wooden poles. Now, you got those first, because if you didn't have those wooden poles, no matter what you draped over the top of it, you wouldn't end up with a tent. That's what a protein is. It's central to the structure of every single cell in your body. You have about 100 trillion cells in your body, all based upon protein. Hippocrates has created the most protein-complete diet, augmented by crucial mineral balance which is lacking in foods grown in deficient soil. Another thing that Anna Maria discovered over the decades of her doing microscopic research is that the interaction between trace minerals and proteins, totally void in the literature of nutrition, is central to the absorption utilization of proteins. There's a dance, a nuance, this beauty going on between proteins and minerals. And sadly, meat eaters, dairy eaters generally lack protein, and a lot of what we call beer bellies are literally what you see with little starving children with protein deficiencies in other countries. We just have the fat draped around that distended protein deficient belly that people have. Where in fact, what we start to see is the minerals. You may be getting a lot of protein, but if you don't have minerals to make that work within the human cell structure, you're in trouble. Complete proteins are food containing all the essential amino acids. There's approximately 9 amino acids that we are required to get from our foods. All of the other amino acids, proteins, you create in your own body. Isn't that amazing? Your body's almost like self-perpetuating. And the number one way to get those proteins, it's very simple. And if you listen closely, you'll never have to learn more than what I'm telling you. And on the last day, tomorrow evening, the last day, we're going to get back to this again. Every drop of life on this earth, including you, comes from the what? Sun. When you look at food that has the most sunlight in it, that is a food with the most protein in it. Is this my opinion? This is a fact. This is an undebatable fact. Which foods have the most sunlight in it? The 3 central foods to the Hippocrates diet. Blue-green and green algae have the top essential fatty acid, exactly the same one your brain is made of. Have blue-green algae, 54% protein, chlorella, green algae, 52% protein. No food even comes close to that number in protein. The second food we tell you to consume is sea vegetables. Sea vegetables, by the way, unless you poured radioactivity directly on them, do not pick up radioactivity. As a matter of fact, when Dr. Anna Marie and I were invited to go to Russia, and we were talking and working with people who had been exposed at Chernobyl, what we did is we told them that the way that you eliminate that is by taking algae orally and soaking your body in kelp in a very hot tub. No better way on this planet Earth and to get rid of radioactivity than consuming algae and soaking in salt algae. Dulse, arami, hiziki, wakame, all of these are remarkably healthy foods, high protein, high essential fats, and the most minerals of any food anywhere on the earth now is in sea vegetables because as we've systematically eroded the soil, it ended up at the bottom of what? The ocean. The last one are the well-known sprouts. Matter of fact, your government, along with Monsanto, General Foods, etc., today put out another crazy alert about sprouts and had the audacity to say, since 1997, we've had 30 people report, 15 years, 30 people report they got sick from eating sprouts. Why would you even put a report out like that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because as they see the development, the eruption of consciousness that's coming up with people, they fear the future when you're independent. When you can take a pound of seed and grow it into 10 pounds of the most nutritious food on the planet Earth. And I had the great blessing to work and do that when they brought me to India, when they brought me into Egypt, and we went into villages with hungry and starving people. For every 1 pound of food, seeds, we made 10 pounds of totally nutritious, high-protein, digestible food. And every seed, every nut, every grain, every bean can be grown uniquely into totally different nutritious foods. In my book, LifeForce, thank you so much. I appreciate that. In my book, LifeForce, give him a hand. He's great at that. Stephen's training his children. He wants to retire by next year, he said. But But in this book, one of the things I've been most proud of writing in my life is a chapter that's the sprout pharmacy. And in there it goes from A to B to C and tells you what that sprout prevents or helps you eliminate as far as disease. The most impressive medicine I've ever used in my 41 years of work is sprouts. Not to say there's not needs for other types at times, but sprouts have been by far universally the most effective, universally available, and least expensive way. As John Hopkins once again said, the most impressive anti-cancer agent we've ever looked at is a broccoli sprout. I'll add to that, by the way, onion sprouts are better, garlic sprouts are better, and cabbage sprouts are almost as good as broccoli sprouts and a whole lot less expensive. Things like sunflower seeds and their sprouts, sesame seeds and their sprouts, sprout juices. What I have here is a sprout juice. Something like this that's probably half sprouts has a protein the average American gets in 3 days. And this is why we see at Hippocrates people come in with full blast diabetes, and by the third day they're saying, what's going on? Because their blood sugar is balanced, because you're getting massive protein. The way you regulate blood sugar and take away ultimately your addiction to sugar is by constantly saturating your body with digestible protein. Mung bean sprouts. Interesting, the Asians knew that. There is no cuisine from Asia that somewhere doesn't have a mung bean sprout in it, a complete protein. In my book, I write about if you have premature balding or graying of your hair, breast concerns, prostate concerns, there is no better medicine food I've ever known in my life than a Chinese bean sprout, a mung bean sprout. Amazing. High in what? Zinc. Cooking destroys amino acids that are essential for body and brain function. So, who could get protein, although not a lot, from meat? Those who would slaughter the animal, drink blood from its jugular vein within minutes, and then you would get 19% protein. But if you eat meat, as I did, some rancher out in the West slaughters the animal, freezes it, flies it, or ships it across the country. Months later, and that's literally the time period, months later you then take it and cook it. If you think you're getting a complete protein from that, you better think again. It is not a complete protein. So those of you that are ruthless and want to consider consuming animals, then you have to get very fast and running, get a good pair of shoes, chase the animal, nice big knife, get the jugular vein. They do this in a certain tribe, and they're pretty healthy, by the way, down the side, and get that animal down there as it's screaming at you and drink the blood out of its vein. Now, if you do that, you shouldn't be in this conference, by the way. We'll escort any of you out that would like to do that. Consumption of casein, a milk protein in dairy foods, has a higher correlation with cancer than cigarette smoking does to lung cancer. Now think about this. If I say lung cancer, you immediately, without thinking, say smoking. Cornell, Campbell, 50 years of research says, I found out that casein in every form of cancer, not just lung cancer, every form of cancer, is the number one dietary cause for cancer. Causes the most liver cancer, brain cancer, bone cancer, pancreatic cancer, And so those people that say, well, it's okay, I won't eat meat, which means, by the way, fish, chicken, wild game, red meat, pork, say, well, I do take dairy food. Well, if you want cancer, congratulations. Because the meat that gives you the most cancer is chicken, not red meat, by the way. Look at the work of Dr. Livingston, 60 years of research on that. And the number one, even better than chicken to give you cancer, is casein in milk. What kind of milk? Homogenized, non-organic milk? No. It's just as good in organic raw milk. So you can get cancer from organic raw milk just as easy as you can from what you buy out of Stop and Shop down here. Meat leaves behind fats and acidity, which are ultimately destructive for human health. Now, you must know that. The coronary arteries. How many of you got to see my colleagues film Eating years ago, or the recent one that was done, Fork Over Knives. Esselstyn, I love Esselstyn. What I love about Campbell and Esselstyn is both were farm boys. I couldn't quite figure out why I liked them so much. They always look you in the eye and talk to you straight, unlike almost anyone with that level of education that I've ever worked with in medicine. And once I found out both were farm boys, they just strived to find out what was really true. And Esselstyn, when he was pulling out fats from people's arteries year after year and became a renowned fat puller at Cleveland Clinic, people would fly in to see Dr. Esselstyn. He's a known, the best, the top cardiovascular surgeon. And lo and behold, as he was rushing and eating hamburgers and steak and French fries and cheeseburgers and God knows what else, he ended up with fat in his arteries. And he said, aha, that was an aha moment. Well, guess what? I know how they got that fat in their arteries. I'm going to stop eating that. And in one fell swoop, gave up all animal food. And his colleagues thought he went completely bonkers and denounced him. And so he went to his colleagues wisely, as a farm boy would, not an intellectual. They tried to have a pissing match and everyone would get wet. No answers would be given. He went and said, look it, if you don't think what I'm doing is right, give me your sickest patient. And they all laughed and said, oh, great, we'll give the one has 99% clogged in their arteries. So he got 10 of the worst patients, clogged arteries, showed a scan. A year later, showed a scan. They all had completely clear arteries. There was one change, and it wasn't medicine. What was it? A plant-based diet. Now, how much more do you have to know, people? Your problem is you're an addict. My problem is I'm an addict. There's two kinds of addicts here, recovering addicts and active addicts. But you all have a chance to be recovering addicts. Now, don't think you're a saint. There's no saints here. Any of you think you're a saint? We'd ask you to leave with a meat eater. All right. Vitamins act as the umbrella that creates cell structure, the covering of the tent. So we go back to the concept that the central part of a cell, or your anatomy, is protein, the poles, but what covers it, today it's nylon, in my day it was canvas. Remember that stinky canvas? You almost wanted to wake up to get out of the darn thing. When it got to 90 degrees here in the summertime and that thing started to boil, oh my God. But bottom line is that covering is like the vitamin. And the vitamin is incredibly important. And the way I can make you understand this best is here in this country, when I go to Europe, you see a lot of elderly folks in their 80s and 90s. If they just happen to touch the side of a table, they start to bleed and they bruise. You know what that is? Long-term vitamin deficiencies. Where if you go to indigenous tribes in the world at 90 years old, they're pushing each other on the ground, giggling, having fun, and playing games. Nobody's bleeding and nobody's bruising. Why? Because they haven't had long-term and generational vitamin deficiencies. We have in our culture. Because as we went away from our original plant-based diet, my diet, by the way, had no plants in it when I was young. As a token event so that we looked a little civil in the neighborhood, my mother would give us string beans that couldn't really be called string beans. They were these stringy, lifeless strands that were floating in butter on Sunday. That was just so we looked a little civil. We really didn't like them. I don't think we ever ate a vegetable in my house. How about you? And if you did, what kind of vegetable was it? And where do you think nutrients come from like this? They sure don't come from meat. You don't get vitamins from meat. You don't get vitamins from dairy food of any significance that builds the body. You only get it from the plant, which is closely related to the sun. Keep remembering, whatever else I say, wait a minute. How close is that to the sun? And if it's close to the sun, you're going to get the most out of it. Vitamins are the building block of the human cell and therefore of the human body. And when you start to look at that, it's just remarkable. A lot of people say, oh, look at that woman over there is so beautiful, she glows. I'll bet you $1 billion that that woman has a lot of nutrients in her. There's no such thing as a shiny person who doesn't have some level of biological health because they're nourished. And then you see people over there who look gaunt and gray and feeble, and I'll bet you $1 million that that person is malnourished. And it's that simple. Vitamins are destroyed or changed when heated above 118 degrees Fahrenheit. So most vitamins are wiped out. They're non-existent once you what? Cook them. So when I was a vegan, well, I'll give you my transition. I went from a maniac meat eater and a massive dairy consumer to a vegetarian that ate dairy food and vegetarian cuisine, gave up the dairy food, became a macrobiotic, and went from macrobiotics to a raw food diet. And the only way I can articulate the description of the difference is every step was an improvement. But I didn't get well until I started to eat life, until I started to come to life itself. And again, it didn't happen at first. I was a skeptic at first because I said, well, I felt better when I was eating the other way, when I ate a lot of the grains. Because you do feel better when you're stuffing your body, slowing your metabolism down, and feeling you're squelching your insecurity. Because you're giving yourself a lot of cooked stuff that breaks down to what? Sugar. So you're pacifying your emotional state. And when you rip that away and you start to take a lot of these greens and you're not putting sugar in the candy foods, as I call them, into your mouth, this sense of insecurity can come if you haven't worked on your emotions. And we once again go back to the central cause of illness, lack of emotional stability. It's not lack of nutrition first. If you had emotional stability, you probably wouldn't have to be here listening to me teach you all of this. You probably have this down already. Vitamins require oxygen and enzymes to carry them into the cell, which allows the building process to commence. Remember what we said earlier. We've known that since 1917. We get to minerals and trace minerals. Completely interesting, because a trace mineral is just a mineral you need less of. That's the difference. Just one you need less of. These help to hold the permanent structure of the cell together and act as a bioelectric conduit, the ropes that anchor the poles. So now the tent poles are in the middle of the protein, the covering, the vitamins are there, and now we have the ropes that hold down the tent and hold the poles to the tent. And they're like a wiring that moves the electromagnetic frequency through the pole, through the tent, through every aspect of that structure. In this case, it's called what? The human anatomy, the human body. Now, with that said, these are bioelectric conduits. So your electric body requires minerals to correctly and systematically move electric through the meridians of your body. The most important system of your body is not the ventricle system or the organ system of the body or even the cellular system of the body. It is the electrical frequency of the body. And as the Asians taught us more than 2,000 years ago, they call that the meridian systems of the body. And we've come a long way to sophisticate and learn more about that today. Matter of fact, one of my projects I'm working on now with my 97-year-old friend, we're going to be talking about this on Sunday, Dr. Valerie Hunt, 97 years old, is the new biology. We're literally setting out and have begun to write the new biology to replace the biology of matter, as we call it. So hopefully we can put into the hands of good researchers, doctors, and practitioners the understanding that we're now giving you this weekend. That we've got to get behind and look at the electric. That's really what propels health or illness. These are the stepping stones for electrical stimuli throughout the body. They ground all systems and structurally build hard tissue. Hard tissue is what? The bones. And most of you don't realize, because you've been conned by even the nutritional industry, that calcium is a very rare lack. I see a lack of calcium in women 1 out of about 125. Hardly anyone, even junk food eaters who come to us, have calcium deficiencies. But hard tissue needs a wide cross-section of other minerals, strontium being the most important. Calcium's a little important, magnesium more important, and most important is not the minerals, it's what we do to the bone structure, and that's press it, press it, press it, And the only way we effectively do that is called weight lifting. If you do not weight lift, and you're a thin person, and a female especially, you will get, even on this diet, osteoporosis. Because it is not just food, it is a combination of things that allow us to become well healthy. And again, it's only been recent generations where we haven't all weightlifted. Everyone weightlifted. Maybe not at the LA Fitness, but we weightlifted in farming. We weightlifted in manufacturing. We weightlifted as mothers picking up our babies. Do you think they had carriages? My grandmother weightlifted when she cleaned her clothes down in the basement in a bucket down there. People weightlifted. You don't even get down the street walking. You get in a car and go half a block away. That's what's happened to us at this point. I mean, we used to at least get up and turn our television sets when we didn't like what was on. Now we have clickers. It's unbelievable, you know. We become more and more sedentary. I look at kids today. I think of my mother here in this area. My poor mother would have been out this time at night with all the mothers in the neighborhood with flashlights yelling, "Brian, Brian, where are you?" We'd be running around the neighborhood. You don't have to do that with your kids. They're upstairs on a computer now. Nobody does anything anymore. Like amazing. I don't know what we're going to do with the obesity level. Well, I know what we're going to do. Shut the damn computers off. Shut the televisions down. Start to employ exercise again. I mean, simple stuff. Some of the better sources are sea and freshwater foods. They are highest in minerals, as we said, and trace minerals. Consume these, like kelp, dulse, arami, haziki, the freshwater algae we mentioned. Amazing, amazing stuff. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to now talk a little bit more about LifeForce and then open up for some questions, because we want you in each of these segments to get as much information as you possibly can. So we're running through this very, very quickly. Well, let's go back to this section. In this book, LifeForce, I talk about the 5-tier approach to optimum living. Now, the maximum level that everyone wants to be at is what? Platinum, number 5. The platinum level is what we should aspire to. And we'll go through each and every one of these. It doesn't mean I anticipate that every one of you are going to come here, even if you come for the entire 20-some-hour conference and really absorb and understand what we're saying, that all of you are going to walk out of here and become 100% engaged as I've become over 41 years. I didn't do this all at once. Remember this. Sometimes this is a process. Now, if a person's very ill, they better get the process quick. You don't have time to mess around. You know, this isn't laissez-faire along the way. You have to just really get. But some of you may enter at the copper level. People at this level find themselves influenced heavily by family, friends, media, and other external forces. Their interest in health and self-improvement are minimal. This may be some of you. Your girlfriend, your husband, the neighbor dragged you here tonight. So what the heck's this guy talking about? I get that. So you may be here. Typically, these people eat non-organic foods, have virtually no regular exercise plan, do little for a fellow man, but at least do attempt to eat a vegan diet. And these are the tree huggers, I call them, most of the time. The omers. They're the guys who are disappointed we're not all gone now. We were all supposed to be gone last week or a couple of weeks ago, remember? I couldn't wait until that damn date was over. They call themselves enlightened because they're waiting for death. Get a life. People at the copper level can often benefit enormously at the Hippocrates Center as they concentrate more closely on their own priorities in life. See, the way we always play games is we try to sacrifice ourselves to others. I want to please him, I want to do that, If we come back to reality, it's got to be about you first. Not egocentric you, not selfish you, but self-respecting you. And if you self-respect, you get it. And once you get it, then you become the good husband, the good wife, the good worker, the good leader, the good child. But you've got to have you, because if you don't have you to give, what are you giving? Nonsense. That's what you're giving. This level of conflict to which their bodies and lives are subjected. As they reconcile these conflicts, they can move with ease to higher tiers. We go to the bronze level. Starting point for many people, it is good at an entry level to the higher tiers. Requires only about 40% living food consumption, with the inclusion of as much as 60% cooked vegan food. Consume as much as organic food as possible. Success at this level and the ability to move up to higher tier lifestyle is determined by level of commitment, reason for wanting change, imminent health issues, desire for considerably more energy, some other higher motivating factor like death. That's a big one for it. I always say to people, even the people who come here well before they're sick, at the end of the day, at the back of their mind, they're fearing what? Death. So that's a good impetus. So if you're really having a hard time moving into the right direction, keep thinking you may die if you don't do it. That's a good way to do it. Note, these reasons need to be internalized for many people to develop to this level or beyond. Then we get to more, genuine type of levels for people. The silver level, entry level for those interested in improving their health and expanding their horizons. Requires 1 to 2 days of personal development per week. You notice we're starting to now talk about the real things that matter. It's not just about eating right, looking good, and feeling healthy. What a mundane life that is. What are you going to do when you look good, feel good, and are healthy? Now what are you going to do? Just stand there? You've got to start to get things into your life that turn you on, fulfill you, make you happy. So get out there in the world, and you may not make a living with something you love, but you may do something you love on your extra time, your free time. I talked to a man yesterday. It was a pretty sad conversation, frankly. Extremely successful man, owned a major multi-billion-dollar company that he created himself from the time he was young. Went and sold it a few years ago, has been in malaise and deep depression ever since. Sitting here in New York City, says, I can't move, I can't get out of my bed, I can't do anything. And I yelled at him at the top of my lungs on the phone for half an hour. I said, do you know something? I said, you're just pathetic. I said, do you realize that you keep thinking of who you were and don't know who you are at this point? Don't tell me you don't know what you want to do. You're just afraid to do it. Do you follow? And that's where most of us have problems. We're afraid, we're fearful to do what we really want to do. And somehow we think we are having to constantly go through turmoil and struggle and concerns and problems. And that's the natural state of affairs. And it's not. If your life has struggle in it, you've got to change your life. I say this to my staff. Half of them think I'm completely nuts. I get them together. I'm going to do it in 2 weeks again, twice a year, and I say, I only want you to do, I have 165 staff members, I only want you to do what you love. And they look at me. They say, no boss has ever told me that. They say, why? I said, it's common sense. If you do what you love, you're going to be good at it. If you don't do what you love, guess what? What I don't love, I may do, but I'm not going to be good at it. It's impossible. I'm not going to 100% commit myself to something that it's a struggle. It's just not possible for that to happen. So you've got to find that you and move forward. 1 hour per month minimum of local or global contributory effort. One thing I'd like to do with all of you, if you haven't done this yet, is even here on Long Island, even in this particular town, not too far away, there is a government-subsidized general hospital. Here in this part of the world, we have very wealthy people and very poor people. Neighborhoods right next to one another. This is the commonality in the United States at this point. I want you to go down, not with the anticipation you're going to do anything, but on a Saturday night, and quietly sit in the emergency room, quietly, and just watch what goes on in a general hospital, a public hospital on a Saturday night. I assure you, after one trip to that hospital, you're going to be a different human being. I want you to go to the nursing home that is subsidized, where the family's forgotten mom and dad. And I want you, if you have the desire, to volunteer there, even if it's once a month. And these are the things that change you. These are the things that humble you. These are the things that give you the very clear understanding of how incredibly successful and happy you've been in your life. And you've got to get down on your knees sometimes and realize that you have it good before you start to know that you can do anything that you want to do. What just happened here in Connecticut recently was heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Anna Marie and I didn't know what to do with that. You know, we have 3 grandchildren and 4 children. And so we went out that weekend and we got orchids, 26 orchids. And we affixed them to trees and we put the names of 20 beautiful little angels and 6 heroic people. And you think, how do these things happen? You know how they happen? For the same reason that people are unhappy and unsuccessful. That they haven't found truth. They haven't found who they are. And so they strike out at others. As all prejudice, all hatred, all war, or anger comes from the same lost place of lack of self. If one has self, they love self. And they want everyone else to share that love. But when you don't have self, you want everyone to come down to that dark, sad place that you are. And that's where this hatred comes from at this point. And we can change that. It doesn't take billions of dollars and time. It takes consciousness. And consciousness can be provoked a lot easier than you think. And we're going to work on that this weekend. Your diet is 100% organic and vegan at that point. We go to the goal level. For those who function in stressful positions which entail considerable responsibility, people at the early stages of legitimate aspirations. I want you to think of those 2 words. How many of you have aspirations that are legitimate? You have illegitimate aspirations. I want a bigger car. I want a bigger house. I need more shoes. That's legitimate. You say, I want more happiness. That's legitimate. I want more contentment. I want more peace. I want more strength. I want more articulation of goodness. That's what I want. Their diet consists of 75% organic living food and as much as 25% cooked organic vegan food. By the way, this is the level that we determined after we did research in Boston, a couple of universities in Boston, people who are healthy can maintain total health on. So here's a refreshing news for a lot of you. You do not have to remain 100% on raw diet to gain superior health after you go through the preliminary period where you are on a 100% raw diet, either to make the change when you're healthy or to fight the disease when you're unhealthy. And we have clearly scientifically dated and validated that it takes approximately 24 months of saint-like, pure, 100% organic living food to reverse the vast majority of major diseases, cancer and right down the list. Now, how do we know that? After observing, watching, and doing clinical research on tens of thousands of people, yes, tens of thousands of people who have recovered, we see that that breaking point is 22 months to 26 months. So it's around 2 years of saintly-like eating that you have to do. When you, by the way, are healthy and smart enough to do this before you're against the wall with guns faced at you, then you may say, I want to be 100% raw for 6 months. And if you don't do that, and I had to learn this the hard way, I'd be raw for a little time and then run back and eat ice cream and be raw for a little time because I kept having the taste of it. Do you follow? But if you really take the boat and get out into the middle of the ocean, you're not as apt to jump back into the water and swim to the shore. Do you follow? So get away 6 months, 8 months, a year, if you have the brevity to do that, and then you're not going to be as adept to go back to the cooked food as you are. But by the way, you could eat up to 20 to 25% by weight, not by imagination, by weight of your diet, once you're healthy, once you're well, either conquering a disease or healthy to begin with, and live in perfect health, the same and no difference between a 100% raw food eater. Why? Because it's about leukocytosis and it's about tolerance of immune function. And by the way, I'm sure if we went back tens of thousands of years ago, the statistic would have been much lower or non-existent at that point. There's been a de-evolution of anatomy and biochemistry because of eating all the wrong things over the year that our body's immune system have learned to adapt to eating some cooked food and not kill you in the process. Isn't that interesting? So it's a bad thing, but it turns out good for you because you don't have to be walking on water for the rest of your life. So give yourself a hand on that one. Community or global contribution once per week. So now we're getting out of the point. Once you have more energy, more confidence, more strength, more health, more spiritual increment, now you have more to give. And what all of you, and some of you know this, so I'm preaching to the choir, what all of you will find is what really fulfills you is what you give, not what you get. Once you have the place in your heart that has already been there, but you have just lost, that you understand fulfillment, the more you give in what you love, the happier, the more complete, and the healthier you're going to be. It's just an amazing, amazing thing. And when I first heard all of this, I would listen to talks on this. I'd say, well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because there wasn't really a scientific rhythm or a mathematic equation that I could look at in that. And I started to really, maybe 20, 25 years ago, peel that back and say there really is. That if you look at basic math, addition and subtraction, you see these types of things. That the more you give, the more you add in numbers, the more you gain, correct? And subtraction, the more you take, 1 minus 1 makes what? 0. And so this is where most of us are. We're struggling between 1 and 0. 1 and 0, we keep going back, rather than saying, here's 1, and here's the second contribution, and here's the third contribution, and the fourth contribution, and the fifth contribution. And what's nice is you open up and give more, you're going to learn how much more you have to give. It's like an Escalade waterfall. The platinum level. Now this is the one that we put serious people on. People who say to me, I want to get a gold medal. I'm going to go to the Olympics, I want a gold medal. Put these people on this. People that come to me and say, I was given 2 weeks to live. I have stage 5 disease. This is what we put people on. Platinum level, at this elevation, we generate and utilize the most self-replenishing fuel to spark us to live continuously at peak performance. Now, what's interesting, if you want to be a super athlete or alive, it takes the same amount of what? Energy. Now we're back again to frequency and energy. So this is not like only sick people do this, only conscious people do this. And to become well, you have to become conscious. Because I know a lot of people that eat exactly the way they should and still die. Do you follow that? This will provoke consciousness, but unless you utilize consciousness, you still won't make it. There's a difference between provoking and utilization of it. Anything that is in your way that you're not utilizing is a block. Do you follow what I'm saying? The platinum level is for people of great responsibility. And who is not of great responsibility? 100% of the world's population is of great responsibility, because you are 100% totally responsible for yourself. You don't have to be the world leader, the president, the prime minister. You are all totally, absolutely responsible. You just haven't gotten that yet. And when you get that, you're going to see how wonderful it is. For competitive athletes and for those who desire the highest level of awareness and functioning, 100% organic living food, consistent mind, body, spirit development. Don't ever get stuck and say, this is what I do to become conscious. You've got to change it, you've got to grow it, you've got to find different ways, you've got to use nuance with it, you've got to challenge yourself, and you've got to always, always be ready to learn more. Because what we knew yesterday, we know more today. And one of the things I've seen that I'm more distressed about in the so-called field of natural health than anything is people are still preaching the same thing they preached 50, 100 years ago. We have learned a lot in 50 and 100 years. When people tell you the same thing over and over and over again and they never change, you're in the wrong hands, I can tell you that. Because if you're not ready and willing to look at the new evidence, the better way, even if it's a half an inch better than what you've been doing for 50 years before that, you are not legitimately a professional. And if you as an individual who may not be in the health professions do not aspire to constantly improve, you can never be as well as you should be. So this is where we're going to end that. We're going to open now for about 15 minutes of questions. And as Stephen pointed out, if you have questions, come on over here, stand in line, and I'll try to be as concise as I possibly can. So don't be shy, come on up, stand over here, and we'll answer questions. And if not, this is going to be a boring time. I'm going to sing for you. You better get up over there right now. You ever heard me sing? That's it.